My sister-in-law hated me for years. Then I discovered her husband's secret and everything changed. I, F29, have been married to my husband Brian, M32, for 5 years now. We met in college when I was a sophomore and he was a senior. It was like something out of a rom-com. I literally bumped into him at the library, spilling my coffee all over his textbook. He was so gracious about it and we ended up talking for hours. We've been together ever since. Brian comes from a tight-knit family. His parents, Jeffrey and Kathleen, raised him and his older sister, Stephanie, F34, in a small town just outside the city. They didn't have much money, but they made up for it with love and support. Brian always talks about how his parents would work extra shifts just to make sure he and Stephanie could go on school trips or have new clothes for the first day of school. Stephanie was always the golden child. She was valedictorian of her high school class, got a full ride to Amore. He's dyslexic, which made school challenging for him, but he worked hard and eventually got his degree in engineering. I've always felt a bit intimidated by Stephanie. She's beautiful, successful, and seems to have it all together. When I first met her, I was a nervous wreck. I wanted so badly for her to like me, but I always felt like I was falling short in her eyes. She'd make little comments about my clothes or my job. I'm a kindergarten teacher, which always left me feeling insecure. Stephanie met her husband, Larry, M35, at a company party 8 years ago. Larry was charming and handsome, the kind of guy who could work a room effortlessly. They had a whirlwind romance and got married after just 6 months of dating. Brian was Larry's best man, and I remember how happy he was to officially welcome Larry into the family. Over the years, Stephanie and Larry had 2 kids, Lily, F7, and Max, M5. They seemed like the perfect family. Their house was always spotless. The kids were well-behaved, and Stephanie and Larry appeared to be madly in love. I'll admit I was a bit jealous. Brian and I have been trying for a baby for the past 2 years with no luck, and seeing their perfect family was sometimes hard to bear. Despite my initial awkwardness with Stephanie, I tried hard to be a good sister-in-law. I'd babysit Lily and Max, help organize family gatherings, and always remembered everyone's birthdays and anniversaries. Slowly, Stephanie seemed to warm up to me. We'd never be best friends, but we could at least have a pleasant conversation at family dinners. Everything changed about 6 months ago. We were having a family barbecue at Jeffrey and Kathleen's house. I noticed Larry was constantly on his phone, smiling at text messages. When Kathleen asked him to help with the grill, he seemed annoyed at being interrupted. Throughout the day, he kept making excuses to step away from the group. A few weeks later, I was at the mall buying a birthday gift for Brian when I saw Larry with another woman. They were sitting at a cafe holding hands across the table. The woman was gorgeous, tall, blonde, probably in her late 20s. I quickly ducked behind a pillar so they wouldn't see me. My heart was racing. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I didn't know what to do. Should I tell Stephanie? Should I confront Larry? I decided to tell Brian first. When I told him what I saw, he was shocked. He didn't want to believe his brother-in-law could do something like that. He suggested we keep an eye on Larry and try to gather more evidence before saying anything to Stephanie. Over the next few months, I noticed more and more suspicious behavior from Larry. He'd leave family gatherings early, claiming he had work to do. He started going on more business trips than usual. Stephanie seemed oblivious to it all. She'd gush about how hardworking Larry was, how lucky she was to have such a devoted husband. Then, last month, I got the proof I needed. I was babysitting Lily and Max while Stephanie and Larry were at a charity gala. Lily asked to use my phone to play a game. When she was done, I noticed she had accidentally opened Larry's Instagram account. He must have logged in on my phone at some point and forgotten to log out. My hands shook as I scrolled through his direct messages. There were dozens of flirty exchanges with a woman named Sarah. They talked about their secret meetings and how they couldn't wait to see each other again. There were even a few intimate photos exchanged. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to my phone. When Brian got home from work, I showed him the messages. He was devastated. We argued about what to do. Brian wanted to confront Larry privately, give him a chance to come clean to Stephanie on his own. But I felt Stephanie deserved to know the truth right away. We went back and forth for days. Finally, we decided to wait until after Stephanie's birthday, which was coming up in 2 weeks. We thought it would be cruel to ruin her birthday with this news. Looking back, maybe that was a mistake. The day of Stephanie's birthday arrived. The whole family was there. Jeffrey and Kathleen, aunts, uncles, cousins. Stephanie was radiant. Larry by her side, playing the role of doting husband perfectly. I felt like I was going to be sick every time I saw him touch her or smile at her. As Stephanie was opening her gifts, I couldn't take it anymore. The fake smiles, the lies. It was all too much. When Stephanie opened my gift, a photo album I had made, I had included printouts of the Instagram messages at the back. Stephanie's face went white as she flipped through the pages. Larry tried to grab the album, but Brian snatched it away. Soon everyone was crowding around, trying to see what was going on. Stephanie started screaming at me, calling me a liar and a homewrecker. Larry just stood there, silent. Jeffrey and Kathleen were in shock. Lily and Max started crying, confused by all the commotion. In the chaos that followed, Larry finally admitted to the affair. Stephanie broke down completely. Jeffrey and Kathleen took the kids upstairs to shield them from the drama. The party dissolved into a mess of tears, shouting, and slammed doors. Now the family is divided. Some think I did the right thing by exposing the truth. Others say I should have handled it privately and not ruined Stephanie's birthday. Brian is torn between supporting his sister and standing by me. Stephanie isn't speaking to me and has asked Brian to cut ties with me. Larry moved out of their house the next day. I keep replaying that day in my mind, wondering if I could have handled it differently. Maybe I should have told Stephanie privately. Maybe I should have confronted Larry first. But every time I think about how he was deceiving Stephanie, how he was making a fool out of all of us, I feel that same anger rise up in me. This whole situation has brought up a lot of old insecurities for me. I keep thinking about how Stephanie always made me feel like I wasn't good enough. Part of me wonders if that played a role in how I chose to reveal the affair. Did I subconsciously want to knock Stephanie off her pedestal? The thought makes me feel terrible. Brian and I have been arguing a lot. He understands why I did what I did, but he's upset about how it's affected his relationship with Stephanie. We've barely slept in the same bed since it happened. I'm worried about what this is doing to our marriage. I've tried reaching out to Stephanie, but she won't return my calls or texts. I've left voicemails apologizing for how I handled the situation, but explaining that I don't regret telling her the truth. She deserves better than a cheating husband. Lily and Max are staying with Stephanie at the house. I'm worried about how all of this is affecting them. They must be so confused and hurt. I've always been close with them, but now I don't know if I'll ever be allowed to see them again. Jeffrey and Kathleen are trying to stay neutral, but I can tell they're angry with me too. They keep saying I should have come to them first, that they could have handled it better. Maybe they're right. I feel guilty for how everything went down. I also feel like Stephanie deserved to know the truth. Maybe I should have found a better way to tell her. But I was so angry at Larry's betrayal and how it was affecting our whole family. So, Reddit? AITA for exposing my brother-in-law's affair during a family gathering? I'm really struggling with this and could use some outside perspective. Update 1. It's been about a month since the disastrous birthday party, and I wanted to give you all an update on the situation. Thank you to everyone who commented on my original post. Your perspectives really helped me process everything that happened. The aftermath of the party has been intense, to say the least. Stephanie and Larry are officially separated. Larry moved in with his parents, while Stephanie and the kids are still in their house. Stephanie initially blamed me for ruining her life, but after a few weeks, she reached out to apologize. We met for coffee at a small cafe halfway between our houses. It was the same cafe where I had seen Larry with the other woman months ago, a fact that didn't escape either of us. The tension was palpable as we sat down. Stephanie looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes and her usually perfectly styled hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. At first, we just sat in awkward silence, both of us stirring our coffees without drinking them. Then, out of nowhere, Stephanie started to cry. Not delicate tears, but deep, body-shaking sobs. I didn't know what to do, so I just reached across the table and held her hand. When she finally calmed down, Stephanie started to talk. She admitted that she had suspicions about Larry for months, but was in denial. She thanked me for forcing her to confront the truth, even though it was painful. Then she shared some details about her marriage that shocked me to my core. Apparently, Larry had been emotionally abusive for years. He'd criticize Stephanie's appearance, make her feel guilty for spending time with friends, and even control their finances. The affair was just the tip of the iceberg. Stephanie confessed that she had been so mean to me over the years because Larry had convinced her that I was trying to undermine their marriage. He'd twist my words and actions, making Stephanie believe I was jealous and spiteful. I felt terrible for not noticing these signs earlier. Stephanie had always seemed so confident and put together. I never imagined she was dealing with such pain at home. It made me think back to all the times I had envied their perfect life, not realizing what was really going on behind closed doors. Stephanie also opened up about her childhood, sharing stories I had never heard before. She talked about the pressure she always felt to be perfect, to live up to their parents' expectations. She admitted to resenting Brian sometimes for how easily things seemed to come to him socially, even though he struggled academically. It was like years of pent-up emotions were finally spilling out. We ended up talking for hours, crying and laughing, and finally starting to understand each other. It felt like the beginning of a real friendship, something I had always hoped for, but never thought possible. Brian has been struggling to process everything. He looked up to Larry as a brother and feels deeply betrayed. He's been spending a lot of time with Stephanie, helping her with the kids and offering emotional support. It's been hard on our marriage as Brian is often at Stephanie's house until late at night. I understand why he feels the need to be there for his sister, but I can't help feeling a bit neglected. The kids, Lily and Max, are having a tough time understanding why their dad isn't living at home anymore. Stephanie asked me to help explain the situation to them in an age-appropriate way. It was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. We sat them down and tried to explain that sometimes grown-ups need time apart to figure things out. Lily seemed to understand somewhat, but Max just kept asking when Daddy was coming home. It broke my heart. Larry has been trying to worm his way back into Stephanie's life. He sent flowers, written apology letters, and even showed up at their house unannounced. Stephanie has stayed strong so far, but I can see she's tempted to give him another chance for the sake of the kids. She told me about how Larry would always bring her favorite chocolates after their big fights, or surprise her with weekend getaways when things got really bad. It's clear that these patterns of abuse and reconciliation run deep. Jeffrey and Kathleen have been incredibly supportive of Stephanie. They've been babysitting the kids more often, and even offered to help Stephanie financially if she decides to divorce Larry. I overheard Jeffrey on the phone with Larry, telling him in no uncertain terms that he needed to respect Stephanie's wishes and give her space. It was the angriest I've ever heard mild-mannered Jeffrey. As for me, I'm still processing everything. I stand by my decision to expose the affair, but I regret the way I did it. The public humiliation was unnecessary and probably traumatized the kids. I've been having nightmares about that day, waking up in cold sweats reliving the moment when Stephanie saw those messages. I've been trying to make amends by being there for Stephanie and the kids as much as possible. I've been cooking meals for them, helping with housework, and taking the kids to the park to give Stephanie some alone time. Last weekend, I took Lily to her ballet class and nearly cried watching her twirl around, a moment of joy in the midst of all this chaos. Brian and I have had some heated arguments about the situation. He feels torn between supporting his sister and maintaining boundaries in our own marriage. We've decided to see a couples counselor to work through these issues. Our first session is next week, and I'm nervous but hopeful. The rest of the family is still divided. Some relatives have reached out to offer support, while others are still giving me the cold shoulder. At a recent family dinner, things got heated when Uncle Bob started defending Larry, saying, "Boys will be boys." Aunt Sarah shut that down quickly, but the tension lingered for the rest of the evening. I'm trying to focus on the positive changes that have come from this situation. Stephanie is finally free from an emotionally abusive relationship. The kids, while confused, are no longer living in a home filled with tension and secrets, and Stephanie and I are finally developing the sisterly bond I've always hoped for. It's going to be a long road to healing for everyone involved, but I'm committed to being there for my family every step of the way. I just hope that someday we can all look back on this as a turning point that ultimately made us stronger. Update 2. It's been 3 months since my last update, and a lot has changed. I appreciate all the support and advice I've received from this community. The biggest news is that Stephanie has filed for divorce. She finally reached her breaking point when she discovered that Larry's affair with Sarah wasn't his first. Apparently, he had cheated on her multiple times throughout their marriage. Stephanie found out about the other affairs when she hired a private investigator to gather evidence for the divorce proceedings. The PI uncovered a trail of infidelity dating back to the early years of their marriage. There were at least 3 other women that Larry had long-term affairs with, not to mention numerous one-night stands. When Stephanie told me about this, we were sitting in her kitchen late one night after the kids had gone to bed. She was eerily calm as she laid out all the evidence the PI had gathered. Photos, hotel receipts, text messages. It was like looking at someone's whole life unraveling in front of me. As she talked, Stephanie absent-mindedly twisted her wedding ring around her finger. At the end of the night, she had taken it off and placed it in a drawer. Stephanie said this new information gave her the closure she needed to move forward with the divorce. She told me she felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner, but I reminded her that Larry was a master manipulator. We ended up going through old photos that night, and Stephanie pointed out all the times Larry had lied about where he was or who he was with. It was chilling to see how easily he had deceived all of us. Larry didn't take the news of the divorce well. He showed up at Stephanie's house drunk one night, yelling and causing a scene. Brian and I were there having dinner with Stephanie and the kids. Larry started pounding on the door, screaming for Stephanie to let him in. The kids were terrified, hiding under the dining room table. Brian had to physically restrain Larry while I called the police. It was a terrifying experience, especially for Lily and Max. After that incident, Stephanie got a restraining order against Larry. He's only allowed supervised visits with the kids now. It's been hard on Lily and Max, but Stephanie enrolled them in therapy to help them cope with the changes. Lily has been having nightmares, often waking up crying for her dad. Max has become very clingy with Stephanie, refusing to let her out of his sight. Brian has been amazing throughout all of this. He's really stepped up to support Stephanie and the kids. He's been like a father figure to Lily and Max, taking them to school, helping with homework, and even coaching Max's little league team. Last week, he spent hours helping Lily build a science project for school. Seeing him with the kids makes my heart ache for the family we've been trying to have. While I'm proud of Brian for being there for his sister, it's put a strain on our marriage. We barely spend any time alone together anymore. When we are home, we're either arguing about the situation or too exhausted to talk. The other night, I woke up at 2 a.m. and found Brian's side of the bed empty. He was in the living room, poring over Stephanie's divorce papers, trying to find any loopholes Larry might exploit. We've been seeing a marriage counselor, which has helped a bit. We're working on setting boundaries and making time for our relationship amidst all the family drama. Last week, we managed to have a date night for the first time in months. It was nice to just be us again, even if we spent half the time talking about Stephanie and the kids. Stephanie has been making progress in her healing journey. She joined a support group for divorced women and has been reconnecting with old friends. It's nice to see her smile again, even if it's just for brief moments. She's also started taking an art class at the local community center. She used to love painting in college, but gave it up when she married Larry. Seeing her rediscover this part of herself has been really beautiful. The kids are slowly adjusting to their new normal. Lily has become very protective of Stephanie, always asking if she's okay and trying to help around the house. Max, on the other hand, has been acting out at school. His teacher called Stephanie last week because he got into a fight with another boy who said something mean about divorced parents. Stephanie's doing her best to provide stability and love, but it's clear the divorce is taking a toll on them. As for me, I'm trying to find my place in all of this. I still feel guilty about how everything came out, but I'm working on forgiving myself. I've been spending more one-on-one time with Lily and Max, trying to be a stable adult figure in their lives. Last weekend, I took them to the zoo. For a few hours, watching them laugh and play, it almost felt like things were normal again. The extended family is slowly coming around. Jeffrey and Kathleen have been incredibly supportive, often coming over to help with the kids or just to keep Stephanie company. Some of the relatives who initially blamed me for breaking up the family have apologized after learning the full extent of Larry's behavior. Uncle Bob, who defended Larry at that family dinner, came to me in tears after finding out about all the affairs. He apologized for his comments and asked how he could help support Stephanie. It's been a challenging few months, but I'm hopeful that we're moving in the right direction. Stephanie is stronger than I ever gave her credit for, and seeing her stand up for herself has been inspiring. There's still a long road ahead, but I'm committed to being there for Stephanie, the kids, and of course, my marriage to Brian. One day at a time, we're rebuilding our family. Not in the way we expected, but perhaps in a way that's more honest and resilient than before. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some final thoughts on this whole situation. The divorce between Stephanie and Larry was finalized last month. It was a long and messy process, but Stephanie came out of it stronger than ever. She got primary custody of the kids, with Larry getting supervised visitation every other weekend. The day the divorce was finalized, Stephanie invited Brian and me over. We sat on her back porch, drinking wine and watching the sunset. There was a sense of relief in the air, like we could all finally exhale. Stephanie has really turned her life around. She got a promotion at work and started dating again. She's been seeing a nice guy named Jeffrey for a couple of months now. We met him at a family barbecue last week. He seems kind and respectful, and most importantly, the kids like him. It's still early days, but it's nice to see Stephanie happy. The kids are doing better, too. Lily is excelling in school and has taken up ballet. She had her first recital last month, and watching her twirl on stage and her little tutu brought tears to all our eyes. Max is still struggling a bit, but he's made progress in therapy and his behavior at school has improved. He started playing soccer, which seems to be a good outlet for his energy. Larry, unfortunately, hasn't changed much. He's still trying to manipulate Stephanie and the kids. He missed several of his visitations and constantly makes excuses. Last week, he showed up late to pick up the kids, reeking of alcohol. Stephanie refused to let them go with him, which led to another shouting match. Stephanie's handling it well, but it's hard on the kids. Brian and I have worked through a lot of our issues. We've set clear boundaries with Stephanie and make sure to prioritize our own relationship. We even managed to take a weekend trip, just the two of us last month. It was nice to reconnect and remember why we fell in love in the first place. As for me, I've developed a much closer relationship with Stephanie. We've become genuine friends, not just sisters-in-law. We have a standing weekly coffee date where we catch up on life, share advice, and sometimes just sit in comfortable silence. I never thought that would happen after everything that went down. Last week, Stephanie thanked me again for exposing Larry's affair. She said that even though it was painful at the time, it gave her the push she needed to leave a toxic relationship. Hearing that helped ease some of the guilt I've been carrying. Looking back, I still believe exposing the affair was the right thing to do, even if my method was flawed. It set off a chain of events that ultimately led to positive changes for everyone involved. Stephanie is happier and healthier than I've ever seen her. The kids, while still adjusting, are no longer living in a home filled with lies and tension. And Brian and I have grown stronger as a couple through all of this. This experience has taught me a lot about family, loyalty, and the importance of honesty. It wasn't easy, but I think we've all grown from it. There are still tough days. Days when the kids cry for their dad or when Stephanie doubts her decision to leave Larry. But we face those days together now as a family. I don't know what the future holds for us. Stephanie and Jeffrey's relationship is still new, and who knows where it will lead. Larry is still a part of our lives because of the kids, which brings its own challenges. And Brian and I are still navigating how to balance our marriage with the needs of our family. But for now, I'm choosing to focus on the positive. On the sound of Lily's laughter as she practices her ballet moves in the living room. On the proud smile on Max's face when he scores a goal in soccer. On the way Stephanie's eyes light up when she talks about her art class. On the feeling of Brian's hand in mine as we face this new chapter together. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. Your advice and kind words have been a source of strength for me. While this chapter of our lives is closing, I know the story isn't over. We'll continue to grow, heal, and move forward as a family.